Anyway, I was re-listening to one of my videos, the one about the fly, and just testifying I was about my husband, first husband, Joseph. And the Lord reminded me just how all this is fitting together just perfectly. Because when we were courting, I used to stay overnight at his house in his lounge on a mattress. And that's when he started telling me about his nightmares. I'd never experienced them until, like, I didn't know what it was like to sleep with someone who had hallucinations. That's what he said they were. Until we were married. And yeah, I used to... Well, I can tell you now that the Lord has shown me that I held back those hallucinations. Just him having the presence of God next to him. And he had relief, quite a lot of relief, but he would still stand up in the middle of the night, and it was quite dangerous. Very big man, he could stand on me. I'd always get clear of him, and he was seeing things and swiping in the ear. He was awake, so that's what I saw, witnessed. But his testimony to me was that the worst thing he ever saw that had an impact in the natural completely, as in more than just be terrified and go back to sleep, was a Māori chief. No shit. Why would an English Pākehā see a Māori chief? It's not something that's in his conscious mind. It's not something that your mind would conjure up. He woke up, it was standing beside him, all done up with the mokus and everything. And I can tell you now why he saw a Māori chief. Because I'm not too happy about what my assignment is. Because I'm rebuking the generations back, the cannibalism in the Māori people. I don't know what I say in Māori, but I've got an inkling, and I'm pretty sure that God covers that. Because he has laws against it. So anyway, this visits him when I'm courting. Before I start courting, he starts courting me. After his brother's death, I managed to, it sounds horrible, but I got rid of him. I palmed him off to one of my friends. And, I cared for the guy, and I do regret what I did, but it was the way it worked out. I was surprised one of my girlfriends crushed on him, liked him. So it's not that I just didn't discourage it, if you know what I mean. And he slowly moved out of my life. Well, she was poisonous. He ended up being like a battered man. Because that's one of the things I mentioned, but I didn't follow through with, where he said the worst thing he feared was neediness. Now, he was a very needy boy, and he had a horrible, chaotic upbringing. When his mother did leave, the alcoholic father, Bernard, because he died of alcoholism, I forgot to say that, she lived a happy lifestyle and had all sorts of people in her house running around naked, open drug taking. Happened to be across from his high school. And, he was terribly persecuted for it, and he was backward at school. They had him in a special class, and this guy has a PhD. So that's nurture for you. And that's the woman who wanted my children. That's the sort of nurture she gave her children, and called me unfit in court. But the Lord told me that she was Madonna. And 6 months before they took the children, the two of them did it together in cahoots, to go and live up there with her. It's the sort of vision that I had. I've had it probably 3 times when I've been awake and just closing my eyes in bed, waiting on the Lord. My eyes were closed. Well, in this vision, my eyes were open, and I heard in the spirit. It was like the veil was lifted with my ears in the spirit. I heard a phone. And then I saw it was like a cartoon where you see a picture, you know, like a wee picture. I saw her on the telephone talking to Joseph. She'd rung him. I've got to get back to the flies, remember? But she'd rung him, and she had a job offer for him because he had studied so hard and recovered. He recovered from his childhood and realised he had a brain, and he had this degree, a master's. But his money had run out, his funding, and he didn't know what to do next, and he'd never worked yet. He'd worked a year in his life. He'd never really worked. He had anxiety, tremendous anxiety, tremendous panic attacks. Oh, I couldn't relate to it because I've never lived like that. Sorry, my dog's just all over me today. And lost track now. He was panicking when he asked me to separate, to leave. He was panicking because he had run out of funding and he didn't know how he was going to survive. And I know now that one of his reasons for asking me to leave was so that he could get the DPB, because I got a job as a teacher and he went on the DPB with the kids. We had the kids 50-50, we agreed, no argument. So when I had this dream, this vision on my bed, was after we'd separated, and I saw a phone call. Now the Lord, it was different from what I saw. What the Lord said was different from what I saw with my eyes. So just because you open your eyes, that does not mean you see. Truthers. You put on the glasses like John Carpenter, the Lord has shown me in a vision. Now take them off, for goodness sake, and see what the Lord wants to show you. That's what he showed me, so you can see. So don't worry about these eyes wide shut and eyes wide open crap movies. They're just there to pander to your ego. You're all very egotistical. You're all very, I found this, I discovered this type of people. You're going to hell. You're going to be herded. That's the message. You can't see. You think you can because you can see the signs. Because the signs say, with the glasses on, don't they? That's not going to save you. Take them off. See with your spiritual eyes. So what he could see, Joseph, very calculating, was a way to provide for himself and his children, not me. And he cast me out, went on the DPB, and I was teaching, which is not what I wanted at that time. I don't want a career. I wanted to be a mother. He pushed me into an early career. My children spent Joshua and Emily were in daycare. I didn't want that, but I obeyed my husband. And what I saw was Angela, her name is, on the telephone. But what I saw wasn't what was there. This is way before Claire. We're talking 20 years ago nearly, 18. The Lord said it was Madonna on the phone. Now the conversation was that she had an offer, a job offer that he couldn't refuse. Remember? The relevance for him, he needed rescued. Before we separated, 6 months before, around the time I saw him devoured by the lion, we had a conversation about going up to Mummy's house in the North Island, and she would buy him and me a house for the children. And I refused. Wouldn't refuse. I said, well, I don't feel that's the right thing to do. I think we should stand on our own 2 feet. And the conversation ended without a fight, but he knew where I stood. And he was going to get what he wanted to get, no matter what. And then from that day on, I was the enemy, because I was stopping him getting an easy way through life. A free handout, let's say. So as soon as I saw that, it was the impact, the emotional impact. The Lord touches your emotions, and I had the sharpest agony in my chest ever. That was the first time. The next time was the adultery, but this is the first time. The agony of knowing that I was going to lose my children, that he was going to take my children, they were going to take my children. So the Lord gave me a heads up. I asked him. He said, no, Lisa, I'd never do that to you. I'd never do that to you or the kids. He maybe wasn't aware that he was going to do it, but the Lord had told me he was going to do it, and he did do it. And leading up to that time, I resigned from my job. My career went down the tubes because I knew what was going to happen. And I took my daughter out of daycare. He didn't want her out of daycare. And I spent time with her before she started primary school. It was a wonderful time. That's Emily, who's a lawyer now. And the following Christmas, after we separated, he took the children 1 year later, just as he said, just as God said. Now, that's the evil fly. So why I wanted to bring this up is because when I was re-listening to that testimony about Joseph, I remembered when we were courting and I told you I was sleeping in the spare room and he has these hallucinations. It's not so much that he saw the Māori chief, but how that worked out for him was he normally gets up when he sees something and turns a light on, and then it will disappear. But this time, this chief was standing between him and the light switch. And this grown 23-year-old man was so terrified he ran over his bed and jumped out the window and broke it. Did an army roll and cut all his up his arm and wrist. So he took himself to A&E, and the psych ward picked him up and recommended he go and see a psychiatrist. He's the one who's seen the psychiatrist. I never had. I got forced to see a psychiatrist when I went to court to see if I was sane, because I was hearing God. And the psychiatrist did what psychiatrists do and explained it away with science and told him that it's a medical condition, and he lived the rest of his life believing that. And he was at a psych world. He went to a psych class, a night class for group for anxiety, and that he was suffering when we were married. So he did what he believed, and I continued in the way of the Lord. He stopped going to church after a while as well. He was never saved. He just tricked me. I was hunted. But the Lord allowed it. That's what I want you to know. I want you to know that the Lord allows these things, because I've got a testimony. And it's telling me about the end of the world. And I'm telling you about the end of the world because I have a testimony, and that's how I overcome. That's what Jesus said, the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. It's not just testifying about who Jesus is, it's testifying about who you are and what Jesus has done in your life. And everyone wants to keep their mouth shut in self-protection, self-preservation. They don't want to expose themselves the way I do. And they don't want to be mean. They think it's mean, it's not nice to talk about other people. Well, if we don't expose the enemy, who will? Now, we don't fight against flesh and blood. He was controlled by a spirit, and it's a pretty big one. So, how do I know that? And how do I know what spirit it is? Because he had a nightmare the night I was sleeping in the lounge. He came through to me. He was a so-called born again, a new Christian who recommitted his life, but he couldn't pray. I don't know why he couldn't pray, but he came to me and asked me to pray for him. And I had no qualms about praying for him. I was in love with the man. And when he left, he was peaceful and he went back to sleep. But he had left me a little gift. And it was a gift, because I'm going to share it with you, and I've shared it recently. I could hear, now these are my ears. Like I heard the telephone, my ears were open through the veil, and I heard flies, like aeroplanes, flying towards me, and then I even felt, as in physically touched my senses on my skin, on my face. I felt them hit me like moths when you turn the light off. Heat-seeking moths. They were hitting me, and I was waving my arms around, and I started praying in tongues, and I rebuked it, and it went. And then the Lord gave me the word Beezlebub. So that's what I lived with. Beezlebub. He did a good job on me. And it's the fly, isn't it? Yes, I just wanted to share that. I think Jonathan Click played again, and there was something he was saying, and the Holy Spirit was just quickening it to me. Oh, yeah. So I just want to remind you that in 2018, I remember being in the bath and him showing me this, that it was a chess game between him and Satan. And I've watched it, and I've seen it at the end of a lot of movies, namely Anna. Notice the ends, the two ends are back to front if you want to watch that one, about the Russian dolls. A play within a play. They play chess at the end. It's all a mystery. Did you see my thumbnail in the last upload? King Street, King Street. Just there, I studied that little, it's a very small alley. It's a narrow road. You can't turn left, it says no left turn. It should go straight through, but it says no left turn. So it's obviously a one-way road, which it is. This is the movie, Open Your Eyes, right, that I watched last night. I put it on the thumbnail. Have a look at the thumbnail, study it. And so I looked on the opposite side of the road, zoomed up the screenshot, and I saw that it was a no U-turn, as in don't turn back. You know not to turn back, don't you? You know not to take your hands off the plough. Well, the big percentage of so-called people who are called but not chosen have turned back. They've turned back if they don't love and utterly adore Jesus like a husband, like you're betrothed and you're going to the marriage supper. If you don't feel that way, then you've turned back. Just because I'm their angel, aren't I? I'm the angel to that church, about the lukewarm church, the ones that get spat out, and they've left their first love. They've forgotten their first love. Don't worry, I've done it in my marriage. I've let it happen. I've tried not to. I've been aware of it ever since I got saved. I've been aware of it. But being aware of it is not walking it out, is it? Are you walking it out? Now, intimacy is what it's all about. So don't hide. Don't hide. Like in the garden, they hid. And what sort of garments did they get for that? Serpent skin. After they did the deed. Possibly both of them. Yeah, there might have been a female version of the snake for Adam. Yeah, pretty much, because they both ate. Why do I say that? Because Jonathan Cleck alluded to it, and then when I went to Christchurch, I asked the Lord to help me, because I had a meet with my daughter, and I've only had a couple of meets, and I know she hears from the bottomless pit, and she's got information, and I asked the Lord to have her say something, that's a bit helpful. And she did. She mentioned her version of the Garden of Eden. Oh, but Eve was the good guy, or the good girl, because Adam was trying to name everything and take over, like the patriotic society. It's so simple. And it was Adam, she said, that slept with the serpent. And she has a name. And I've gone and forgotten it. It won't take much to find that out. The Lord will show me. He'll probably show me soon. It'll come up. She has a name, and that's the one Adam fucked. They were both adulterers. And what does he call this generation? An adulterous generation. Why did I feel the pain of adultery? Because it's not anything that I wish on anyone. Why? Because the servant is no greater than the master, and our master experienced adultery from us. We've adulterated him, but we're adulterers. We're adulterers. We're adulterers. You're an adulterer. You're an adulterer. You've coveted somebody else's wife just by looking at them, or husband. But more than that, you fucked the enemy. You wanted to go down and make love to the flesh, and the Lord said it's wicked. And you get what you sow, you get what you asked for, and it's death, because the serpent lied. We're all going to die without Christ. But remember that death could not hold him down, and it won't hold you down if you have him, truly have him, and you are a faithful servant. Faithful is like a faithful wife, and that's the men too, so you can lay down your egos. Faith is like a faithful wife.